I have put in over 3 hours into Mr. Fantastic in Marvel Rivals, and in today's video I want to go over some of the things that I have learned throughout this grind and how I have been able to basically almost dominate the lobbies each time. The first thing is first, the abilities that he has, I will be breaking them down in little bits, just telling you little tips and tricks. This won't be a super long video for the main reason of I don't want to waste your time. If you have any specific things you want to learn, there will be links down in the description or just on the timestamps itself on the timeline if you just want to jump over to anything that you might be interested in. The first thing is overall, Mr. Fantastic is a DPS character, but in my opinion, it is a DPS character that is slightly disguised because it is a tank. One of the best abilities that he has is if you get enough hits on enemies, which is really easy because of the extent of the arms, which I will be getting into later, you are able to essentially go into this big fat mode that allows you to start bashing down enemies and you get up to 800 health, which is absolute insanity. Personally, tanks are one of my favorite things to use inside of this game, so the fact that a DPS and one of my favorite comic book characters becomes this, honestly one of my favorite things about the character. Now, the best way to actually get in this mode is again with the use of the arms, or the normal stretch punch as it's called. Whenever you use this, you can wobble left and right, and when you do this, you will be able to damage the enemies in the nearby vicinity, which is one of the best ways that I found it to be activated. Now, also something really important with the punches, which I forgot to mention originally, is the range. You don't have an incredible amount. The actual visual representation of the arms looks like you have insane range, but it's only like around, I think, 14 to 13 meters that you have. It won't actually double with the enemies that you hit. You can actually see an example of it being shown off to you on this video. So whenever the character hits one, it goes up by 5, then a second another 5, and then it's only 15, since one hit multiple enemies does count as just 5 overall. But this is where the other abilities will allow you to do it even faster. Personally, I'm on the controller, so the grab ability, or I guess the one where you can either protect your teammates or jump into enemies, which is the flexible elongation, which is L1 on my controller, is an incredible way of quickly pushing enemies as fast as you can. And the thing that I'm going to be telling you is concentrate on the healers. Honestly, from what I've noticed, if you're able to quickly leap over to one of the healers and they're not particularly good as that healer or will have other ones to protect them super fast, you will be able to clear them out. DPS is usually one of the best ways to clear those characters out, but I found out again, tanks or vanguards, whatever you want to call them, is another way of doing that. And again, since Mr. Fantastic has that ability, you'll be able to take them out and charge up that tank ability even faster. And especially since healers stay in the back, you'll be able to get that ability and start taking out those enemies and even potentially using your ult, but more on that later. The next thing that we have is the R1 ability, or deflexive rubber, which essentially you become this like paper thin, which isn't exactly paper thin. You become a wall of a character and you can withstand anything, which is interesting because I've had games where I have been killed, or at least 1 or 2 times have been killed when I'm in that usage, but you shouldn't be able to die. If you're hit enough by anyone, if it's punches or blasts or anything like that, you're then able to shoot that back at the enemies with this little ball that just flies at them. Sometimes it can be strong enough to take out an enemy depending on their health, but usually it's just a really great way of escaping really sticky situations. And a nice combo with this is, which as of right now, since the season 1 just launched and everybody wants to be Sue Storm as well, you will always have the Sue Storm combo, or at least ability with her, which allows you to put on a shield on you, which I cannot emphasize how important it is to remember that you have this ability. At first I was really struggling to kind of remember this, and I did end up dying more than I should have, but since then I've learned how useful this is and how many times you're actually able to get out of a lot of incredibly challenging spots. And then obviously the last thing that we have is the L2 ability, which is the grab one. This one is a bit complicated because essentially you grab an enemy, and sometimes I found myself not even realizing that I was holding the enemy because I just press it and I'm like, oh, I missed, but then I see Mr. Fantastic holding the enemy itself. Well, with this ability, what you can do is simply hold down R2, which is the normal trigger ability for me on controller, and this way you'll be able to almost just launch them into the sky kind of towards you, but it will be dealing damage. Or if you're lucky enough and spot an enemy nearby, you can press R2 and then slap those 2 enemies together, doing double damage, essentially hitting the person you're holding and then another person that you coincidentally grabbed or on purpose. Personally, I found myself coincidentally grabbing the other enemy, but most of the time I do simply just grab one and then just like push them down and hit them that way. And then the last thing that we have to talk about before we get into the combos and ways of doing all of this, is the ult ability, which allows you to bounce on the ground and deal damage. There isn't much to say apart from the most important thing is, if you don't get your hits, you won't be able to have this ult last long. By default, if you only hit maybe once every bounce, you will only get 3 uses. But if you are able to bounce for more than 3, you can go up to 5, and it can actually be pretty deadly. You don't have to do anything. It just bounces on the enemies on its own, which is a really great thing, and it will be dealing damage. I found myself most of the time being the person that deals the damage instead of actually killing, but it is really useful and really nice. Now, before this video ends, I want to say what is the best combo and usage that I've found in taking out enemies like healers or even tanks or DPS, of course, overall. The main thing is concentrate on those healers and use your flexible elongation ability to zoom over to them. Once you're over at the healer, make sure you try to put as many punches into them, and if you take them out and there are other enemies around you, activate flexible rubber, and then once that's up, combine that with Sue Storm's ability, and that way you'll be able to basically maintain your time as long as possible around the enemies, maybe giving back the punches, which will allow you to go into the elastic strength ability on its own. You don't have to do anything for that, where you become big, and if you're just lucky enough, you'll be able to combine that with the ability of bashing the ground. Some other things that I want to mention: your biggest enemy, or at least the biggest enemy that I've noticed, and just overall any DPS will be struggling with this, and that is Penny. Personally, Penny was, or slightly still is, one of my mains, so understanding how to play as that character and you stumble upon those people that do know how to place down those bombs, you will be struggling a lot with that. And of course, your normal Moon Knights, Hawkeyes, Hellas, and stuff like that. So hopefully this video at least slightly explains some of this stuff better. I'm going to be making more videos like this. If you know anything about this channel, I do Call of Duty, but I've been playing this game for over 100 hours. I think I'm nearly at 150. I've been absolutely pouring in countless hours into it, so might as well make some videos on it because I'm loving this game, and Mr. Fantastic is just gonna be my new main because it's Mr. Fantastic. I freaking love the Fantastic Four, and finally we're getting some recognitions. Oh my god. I might make another video like this at some point. Maybe some achievement challenges here and there. Again, over 150 hours already. I have a life, I promise.